I'm going to go ahead and introduce our two speakers tonight and then hand it over to Chancellor Gooch to kick off our speaker series. So tonight we have Matthew Van Vossen, and Matthew's originally from Oak Lawn, Illinois, and currently resides in Naperville, Illinois with his wife Juliet and daughter Abigail. After graduating from UIS in 2011, Matthew went on to attend the John Marshall Law School in Chicago. While in law school, Matt worked for several political campaigns, including Illinois State Senator Michael E. Hastings in 2012, Governor Pat Quinn's 2014 race, and U.S. Congressman Daniel Lipinski through 2016. Matthew obtained his Illinois law license in 2014 and became licensed to practice law in Indiana in 2016, and has been a creditor's rights attorney at Blitt and Gaines PC since the spring of 2015. So congratulations. Give Matt a round of applause. Welcome him back to campus. Joan and I also had the opportunity to show them around campus and see where the old Stars Lounge used to be, which predated this building, so that was great today. Ryan Melchin was born and raised in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. After graduating from UIS in 2011, he began working for the Illinois House of Representatives, where he works as the district office director for 3 state representatives, including 2 right here in Springfield. He also worked for the House Minority Leader as a legislative analyst. And in April 2019, Ryan was appointed to the Sangamon County Board, serving as a board member until December 2020. After leaving state employment, Ryan was the legislative liaison for the Illinois Municipal League for more than 2 years, advocating for all 1,294 municipalities in Illinois. He is currently the public policy coordinator for the Center for Youth and Family Solutions, a nonprofit child welfare agency that provides foster care for more than 1,000 youth in central Illinois, as well as other services to help youth and families better their lives. Ryan represents the agency before the Illinois General Assembly. Ryan's most important role, however, is being the father to 2 incredible kids, Theodore, age 6, and Grace, who's almost 5. Please welcome Ryan back to campus. I'll hand it over to Janet.
Thank you, Ryan. So it's great to have our alumni back on campus and make sure that everybody knows the great things they're doing. So we have to start the evening off by asking you both, why and how did you end up choosing UIS for your education?
I knew I wanted to study political science, and there's no better place to do that than the capital of Illinois, Springfield. This university offered many opportunities that just simply couldn't be found elsewhere. For instance, I was a page for the Illinois House of Representatives for 2 years, and you simply can't do that in Champaign or Chicago. So this really has been the perfect campus for the course that I wish to study.
So I chose UIS. I was in high school volunteering with a local state representative in the suburbs of Chicago, and he had recommended UIS. He had been here several times on campus as a speaker in some capacity, and I was deciding between UIS and a school in Carthage College in Wisconsin, and the affordability factor was a huge decision for me, and then the close proximity to the state capitol, knowing that I could get internships and just be at the capitol as I wanted to, just to observe the process. And I know Matt and I, freshman and sophomore year, spent a lot of time just hanging out at the capitol and just observing the process. So being able to be in close proximity to the capitol was a big selling point for me.
Wonderful. All right, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. So we know we got a little bit of a bio from Ryan, but give us a little bit of an insight into your work right now at the moment.
Well, as the bio indicated, I'm a creditor's rights attorney for about the past 10 years, based in Naperville, Illinois. I'm also licensed to practice law in Indiana. We represent national banks trying to recover on defaulted loans, and it's a pretty adversarial law practice. So I feel that my time here has kind of helped prepare me for that, and I think we'll get into that a little bit later as well.
So I'm a registered lobbyist for a child welfare agency here in central Illinois. We provide, as the bio said, foster care services for about 1,000 youth. We also have social workers. We have behavioral counseling services that we provide. We have a program, Intact Family Services. So these are families that aren't quite haven't been removed. The children haven't been removed from their home yet, but they're on the cusp of having that happen. So we provide services to keep families together. So we have offices all throughout central Illinois, about 500 employees, and and my job is to represent the agency before the General Assembly, talk with legislators about bills and issues that are impacting us and how we can make the work that our frontline workers do easier, because they're out there every day working with some of the most vulnerable kids in our state, and they need all the support they can get. So my job is to meet with legislators, advocate for them, and ensure that their job is just a little bit easier.
Wonderful. So both of you excelling in public service, right? We really talk about that a lot at UIS. Okay, so looking back, when was it that you graduated? How long has it been?
Class of 2011.
2011. Okay, so you can look back that far?
It's been a minute. Yeah.
All right. Looking back, what initially drew each of you to political leadership at UIS?
I think for me, UIS is kind of like it's a small community, so everyone knows everybody. It doesn't take long to meet, another student who lives in a different dorm than you or a different townhouse than you. Everyone gets, in a very short period of time, you get to know everybody. And when you have those friendships that really, people from every background you get to know very quickly. And being interested in public policy and politics, it was just kind of a natural fit for me to run for student government, and then do that for a couple of years, working with Matt on student government. Just the small atmosphere of this university was what motivated me to get involved, because it was so easy. Everyone was so friendly. Everyone's so encouraging, and it was just easy to get involved.
Yeah. Ryan and I had similar backgrounds prior to coming to UIS, where we both worked on political campaigns prior to attending here. And that's part of what initially I think drew us to each other. We had similar backgrounds, similar interests. And when we came here, we wanted to kind of apply that on campus. And as Ryan indicated, the campus is unique in that eventually you get to know everybody, especially if someone who's politically interested. You identify who those students are, and you basically meet the whole universe of students that want to be politically engaged on campus. So, we kind of wanted to be involved with that, and that eventually led to our roles in student government and the College Dems and College Republicans, respectively. And it simply was a blast when we were here.
Okay, so describe your role with the College Dems and the College Republicans.
Yeah, so I was the president of the College Republicans here. That was my junior year here at UIS, and that was right after President Obama had taken office. It was not the easiest time to be a Republican on a college campus, in Illinois especially. And I think my first meeting that I organized, we had maybe less than a dozen kids show up. But I knew that if we kept organizing, we put flyers all over campus, and I was able to successfully recruit some pretty significant Republican officials from across the state to come to campus. And that drew more people out, and by the end of the school year, we were drawing more students to our meetings than the College Democrats did.
Is this true?
Yeah, but we had a concert, so.
So it was about organizing. That was in the height of a political campaign was starting, an election cycle was starting. So candidates were looking to get college kids to get active in their campaigns. So it was really easy to make the ask, hey, can you come out to UIS at 8:30 on a Wednesday night? And they were more than willing to do that. So organizing, I organized a trip to Virginia for a group of about 10 of us to campaign for a gubernatorial race in Virginia. We spent a week there doing that. And so it was organizing, getting people involved. Everyone had their different views. People were more Republican than others. So my job was to help students find out how they can get involved and connect them with the appropriate people to do that.
Excellent. Go ahead.
And during my time here, I was president of the College Democrats my junior and senior year. We fundraised. We took trips to St. Louis to help Obama canvass there while he was running. I don't know if you recall, Obama announced Joe Biden as his vice presidential candidate at the Old State Capitol. While we were in school here, we got to see that in person. A fun side note is when Obama was inaugurated, or not when he was inaugurated, when he gave his victory speech in Grant Park in Chicago, I had tickets, and I dragged Ryan with me, and we ended up on TV together. I was very happy. He was very annoyed, and that was a screen grab that haunts us to this day. So we had a great time, working together as College Democrat and College Republican presidents while we were here. There were a lot of opportunity for overlap. We did debate watch parties. I think both parties were interested in primary debate parties and obviously general election debate parties as well that we held here. And we just, like I said, we knew the universe of the student population by that time, and we tried to garner up as much involvement as possible on campus.
So junior year, college Dems, college Republicans, where'd y'all live?
So we lived on the far end of campus in, was it Trillium?
Yeah.
In
Trillium 13.
13.
In the same room?
We had shared a bathroom.
Yeah.
Shared a bathroom?
Yes. So
How'd that go on? How'd that go down? Everything okay?
We had debates about the proper way to hang a toilet paper roll, but
So you worked together, you lived together.
yep.
Okay.
yeah, it was. So we
Still
had two,
friends.
Still friends. I still keep in touch with the other two roommates that we had at the time. They weren't really politically active.
Thank God.
Yeah, that could have been a mess. But to be honest, when we decided to live together, I don't think politics even played a factor in that, and it just coincided with the fact that we were leading the two organizations on campus. So that we did. It wasn't by design that we did that. It just happened to be the case, and we were able to collaborate together on a lot of events and just being able to talk with each other about what was going on in the world and here on campus too.
We worked really well together, and I think we're both very happy that the opposite side of us was the president of the other organization, as opposed to what could have been as far as the extreme left or extreme right wing politics. We were pretty much closer to each other as far as moderate goes than I think the extreme of our parties at the time. Ryan was certainly never a teabagger, and I was not. I don't think I was in Hillary's camp at the time. I wanted the local guy to win. I wanted Obama to win. So, I think we had a lot in common in that regard.
Very good. And it makes for a good story. Yeah. All right, next question. Were there any specific moments when your political differences tested your relationship? And if so, how'd you navigate them?
When I recall, we were debating organized labor and the role it plays versus private sector employees and the kind of rationale behind unionization and the role unions play in collective bargaining and how that's fair versus unfair against the general private sector. That got a little heated. My father's a union man. Ryan's father was a private sector employee. We went to bed and woke up the next day and had a fresh start. We had a lot more in common than we did differences. So we try not to argue all the time when you're living with somebody. I think that's a good good advice to take, and that's what we followed.
It was good having two non-political roommates living with us because they kind of balanced everything out. And if we would get into a heated argument, one of them would just say, "Hey, let's go do something else." And most of the time it was, "Hey, friends are coming over. Let's just cool it for the night," and we'd forget all about it.
So on that union issue, what were some of your commonalities? Can you remember? Can you remember what some of the more derisive aspects were?
Just the differences within our families, and the role that whether the proliferation of unions was a good thing or a bad thing, and eventually I think we just moved on from it.
It's barely a blip in my mind
Yeah.
at the moment.
At this
It's the
point,
only thing I could think of, in preparation for today.
Okay. All right. So in a time when politics often feels more divisive than ever, what lessons from your college years still guide you today?
I think for me it's that politics doesn't have to be personal. I mean, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and no one is more right than the other person, and ultimately it's the voters that we'll hash it all out collectively. Matt and I disagree on some things, but that doesn't mean we can't go and share a beer together after we talk about it and move on from that. I think today politics is just so tribal, and everyone's in their own camps, and they don't really talk with each other. They talk at each other, and you don't really learn from the conversation. So if you're not willing to listen to the other person, you're not going to be able to reinforce your own beliefs. So I think all the debates and discussions Ben and I had, I don't think he really changed my views, but he helped me to reinforce my own views and prepare myself for future parts of my career that required discussion and collaboration.
Yeah, I think if you have a genuine desire to influence someone's political opinion, you need to have patience. You need to be informed yourself. You need to show respect. Otherwise, you're not going to have any credibility when it comes to the person who's hearing you. And you need to pick your battles. If someone on the street's wearing a red hat and you don't like that, are you ever going to see them again? Do you really need to engage? I don't know. So if you care about someone's political views who differs from you, you really need to put in the work if you want any chance of changing their mind. And if you're not willing to do that, then pick a different battle.
So I'm going to go off script a little bit here.
Sure.
So, you talked about being informed, right? So nowadays it's kind of difficult for people to tell what is fact, right? Out there's so much information, there's so much noise, there's so much information that's artificially generated. So what's your advice, particularly to young people, about fact? How do you figure out what is fact?
Well, it's absolutely hard to separate fact from fiction a lot of times, especially today. I mean, you go on any social media feed and there's just a proliferation of stuff that no one really knows what is accurate and what is not. And I do like just a gut check. You read something, and if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. There's so many stories that are out there that are just there for clicks, and then there's no substance behind that. So you have to, double check what you're reading. A lot of times it's easy to see something and then you want to immediately share that and without any secondary sources behind it. So I try to, if I'm talking about an issue related, at work, I'll hear, coworkers talk about things, but then I need to double check if that is actually true or not. Too many people, especially today, they want to be the first one to report on something. They want to be the first one to be right. They care more about being right than being accurate. And I think that gets our political discussions these days are more about making the other side look bad and not actually caring what they're sharing is actually true or not.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I was in elementary school learning how to do a bibliography where they say, you need to cite at least 3 different sources. So start with the source, go to a reliable source that you trust, that's been around for a while, has a track record of being accurate. Start there for your information. If you come across an article and it's some website you literally have never heard of in your life, maybe don't read it, go to somewhere else. Just try not to react and be more pragmatic when it comes to looking for the information you're seeking.
Excellent. All right, you mentioned with the union issue that your personal backgrounds kind of shaped that argument a little bit. So this question has to do with that. I want to know a little bit about what role humor, empathy, or your personal stories played in helping you find some common ground.
There's definitely a lot of humor in my relationship with Ryan. We have a lot more in common than we do a party. You've heard me say that already tonight, but we had similar sense of humor, similar backgrounds. We were both from Chicago area suburbs, both Cub fans.
What else matters?
Yeah, we had a lot in common that we didn't need to rely on our political agreements to be friends. So we leaned on that.
And I think if you're not willing to laugh at yourself, then
Don't watch old student government videos.
Yes, yes. Yeah, just being able to, not take, if he's making a joke about me, I usually just laughed it off, and, I never took it personally. So being, that self-deprecating humor kind of definitely played a role for me.
Is there a story that you recall that, something that happened to the two of you collectively that just really was a chuckle moment? Come on.
Probably nothing we can share out loud.
Yeah.
Well, think about it, and maybe I'll come back to that one. We'd love to hear some funny story from you both. All right, here's another one for you. How did UIS shape your approach to leadership, especially in politically charged environments? UIS's role. Don't say nothing.
I think what I loved about UIS is the professors would really do a good job of fostering conversation and debate amongst the students. Even, most of the professors I had didn't agree with me politically. A lot of them were very far from me politically, but we would be able to have a good discussion in class about a topic. I took a really good class on the American presidency. That was a very politically charged class. So many students had a range of emotions on the topic at hand. And I think I was one of 2 or 3 Republicans in the class, and everyone else, it was a tough environment to be in for me. But the professor, even though he and I disagreed, he never, I was more vocal than the other 2, but he never made it out. He never used that against me. He graded very fairly. All my papers were I did well in that, even though I had different views than he did. He shared them very openly with us. The students on the other side were the same way, and he kind of, it was clear that he had, his favorites in that group of students. But all the professors I had here were just, they really fostered, being able to express your differences and do it in a way that is respectful. No one walked out of classes upset with anybody, even though the discussions tended to get a little charged at times. But the professors all did a really good job of lowering the temperature at the end of the class, so everyone could walk away, feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, and Ryan and I were both political science majors, so when we were taking similar coursework with other political science majors, who you happen to live with on campus of around 2,500 kids, and who you see often as president of the college Republicans and president of the college Democrats, you're essentially living in a very small community with these students, and they're very passionate, they're very informed. It was wonderful. So there's not really room for grudges in that type of environment, and it was just a great place to learn about political science, as opposed to the real world and the type of engagement you see out there between the parties.
So how about some suggestions for how now students, faculty, and institutions promote dialogue that is both passionate and respectful, the type of dialogue that you talked about? What advice do you have for people?
I would say just, not just for, political dialogue, but just put yourself in the other person's shoes. Think about whatever issue you're talking about, think of it from their perspective first, and then then that'll help inform your own opinion. If you can understand why someone thinks the way they do, you're going to think about your position a little. You may think about it differently. You're not always right about everything. There's no monopoly on having the right ideas. So everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Listen to those opinions. I try to do more listening than talking. That's always been, I kind of take the Clarence Thomas approach, where he doesn't really say a whole lot until it's really needed. So that works out not just in political discourse, but in life in general. With my own kids, it's easy to just tell them what to do, but if I listen to them, I tend to learn a lot more.
Yeah, treat people the way you want to be treated. If you want them to listen to your views, take the time to listen to their views. Be credible. If you're talking about policy or history, be accurate. Do your work ahead of time. The second you're wrong, it's very obvious to someone who knows about the topic that it's like math. If the equation's wrong, you're wrong. So know your history, know your policy, be credible. Otherwise, you're not gonna convince anybody of anything.
Great. So if you could go back in time, would you do anything different in how you engaged with those who had political differences than you on campus?
I would honestly say no. I was pretty happy with all the interactions I had on campus with the college Republicans, and even at the time it was the Green Party. Nothing too crazy happened, I would say.
No, I don't think I would change much of my interactions or how I approached students and friends with different political opinions. I still count many of the Democrats that I met here on campus as friends. A lot of them still live here in Springfield that I keep in touch with. I think I was always respectful of differences of opinion, and I think it worked out pretty well.
So let's say that you're juniors and it's 2025 and you're in your roles and you're on campus right now today. How do you think it'd be different than, or the same, as it was when you were actually here?
I think it would be a lot harder today, I think, because the two parties are so polarized. There's not as much collaboration as I would like to see. The partisan debates of 15 years ago seem like nothing compared to what we talk about today. Every little thing today is a 5-alarm fire that everyone is yelling and screaming at each other about, and cooler heads rarely prevail today in Washington and even Springfield.
Yeah, it's hard to identify the policies of the Republican Party today. So when it comes to countering that, I would find that difficult compared to 2011. The parties have changed a lot since we were here. Back in our day, Obama was the presidential candidate for the Democrats. Mitt Romney and John McCain was the presidential nominee for the Republicans. McCain saved Obamacare. Romney voted to impeach Trump. So the parties have changed a lot. I'm not sure we would be in our identical roles today. And we probably would do things a little differently today.
Could you live together?
Yeah, I mean,
The two of us, yes.
Yeah, I think the parties have changed, but I don't think Matt and I have changed on our overall philosophy on engaging with people with differences of opinion. So I think I would be able to do it.
All right, good. Testament to your friendship. When disagreements get heated, how do you personally keep the conversation productive instead of personal?
I mean, my goal was always to try and convince Ryan to change his mind. So keeping that goal in sight, I tried not to annoy him too much and tried to be as productive as possible. I think you have to have a similar goal if you're trying to convince someone to change their mind.
I think the best way to keep it productive is just to, remember that it's not personal. You just have differences of opinion. That's okay. We're a country of 350 million people. If we all thought alike, that would make life kind of dull. So just be willing to share your opinion. Don't take it personally if they say you're wrong. It's okay. Like we all move on, and we'll get over that, and we'll find something that we agree on. But just because you disagree on one thing doesn't mean you can't find areas of agreement somewhere else.
Excellent. So outside of politics, share something that you admire about the other.
I would say I admire how from what I can see, he's a good father. He works hard at his job. Being an attorney going through law school, that's no easy task, and everything that goes along with being an attorney, juggling that with being a father to a less than 2-year-old, that's hard. It's hard work. Not being an attorney, not going through 3 extra years of schooling after UIS, I couldn't imagine doing that. But I admire his work ethic and being a good father.
I would say the same thing with regards to Ryan's parenting abilities. He's got two great kids who are a lot like him. And one thing I would say about Ryan, he's never fake. Everything he says is what he actually believes. He wears his heart on his sleeve. There's not many people that you meet like that in life, and Ryan has always been who he shows himself to be. So
That's nice. I liked how both of you mentioned your families in your bios. So if a student today told you they didn't think civil discourse was possible anymore, how would you convince them otherwise?
Honestly, my first suggestion would be to turn off cable news. Honestly, I think anyone who watches cable news, as the majority of what they get their news from, it's just a warped view of how life actually is. We're not always yelling and screaming at each other. In the year that Matt and I lived together, I think it maybe got heated a couple of times. But when you turn on Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, they're an outrage-driven entity, and I think too many people get their sources only from one of those outlets. So I would say, when you get outside that bubble, we can find ways to get along, and it doesn't have to be as partisan and as much of a gridlock as it is. It's just that's not how life works. We find ways to work together. We disagree over here. That's okay. And we'll move on from that, and then we'll find something else that we can find agreement on. But it's not how it is on television. Congress is more theater than anything else, and most of them will the cameras go off and they get along pretty fine. But as soon as those cameras go on, a lot of them are playing a part, and that's just not how life really is.
yeah, we all have a lot more in common than we have differences, and it's hard to be reminded of that sometimes, but you have to take the time to remember that, take the time to, you have to be able to stand being in the room with the other person. If you don't even want to do that, then, there's a hurdle right there. So take time to put yourself in the other person's shoes, understand where they're coming from. And, if you have any desire to change their mind, then that requires an investment of time as well, and communication. So instead of sending a Facebook post to the student on campus, walk over there, talk to them, hang out with them. Instead of, sending an email, call them. Show an investment of time if you want to develop a relationship of any kind.
That's great. Okay, second chance on that humorous moment experienced at UIS. You thought I forgot, didn't you?
An unnamed roommate tackled the tree once. That was pretty funny.
Going back to what Matt said about election night 2008 in Grant Park. So Matt, there was, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of people that were there. I was probably the only John McCain voter out of 250,000 people. So anytime they had big TV screens set up and they were announcing the state of Kentucky goes to John McCain, I would be the only one that was happy at that point. And then I got a little strange looks. I think I was wearing my McCain shirt at the time. But then, like Matt said, when the camera panned towards us, that was, I think, right around the time they announced one of the swing states went to Barack Obama. And Matt was very excited, and I was mouthing a certain word that just so happened to, if you saw the picture, you would understand what I was saying at the time. And Matt's mom took a picture of that right at that moment.
That's funny. All right, so this is known as the Chancellor's Thinkers series, right? So in your experience, what separates a good thinker from a great one?
I think it may seem like common sense, but just putting yourself in the other person's shoes. A lot of times we don't, especially in political conversations, we're not willing to do that. Matt and I grew up in somewhat similar, socioeconomic conditions, but it was also very, very different in a lot of ways. So thinking about, Matt's point of view, he drew that from his parents, and I got my views, seeing how my parents interacted. And even though we had similar attributes in a lot of ways, it was still very different in a lot of ways. Like Matt said, his dad, a union household, we were not a union household, and for a lot of families, that's their identity as a family, and that shapes their views on the world around them. So I didn't have that background at all. I don't think I was exposed to anything like that. So that really shaped Matt's views on probably most of his political views. So being willing to think about putting myself in that mindset just gave me an understanding of why he thought the way he did, and I never really challenged him on his beliefs. I never thought he was being disingenuous by any means.
I guess I would basically say try and keep the big picture in mind when you're engaging in anything in life, especially with politics. The goal isn't necessarily to be right with politics. The goal is good governance and what's best for the country. And we're all Americans at the end of the day. So try and keep that in mind, that we're not trying to incite a civil war. We're trying to live with each other and make the country the best it can be. So remember that when you're speaking to your fellow citizens. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. How about an opportunity for the audience to ask us some questions? All right. Ryan will bring around the mic.
So I have a question for you. For those of us who have been here a while, we kind of remember the trend of this happening over the years. I think there were like 3 college Democrat and Republican presidents who actually lived together over the years. What do you remember about the trend of that and how that all got started and kind of is uniquely UIS?
Well, I think we started it, so we were gone for the second pairing. UIS is such a unique small campus that if you're engaged in politically even if you're just a political science major, you end up knowing your fellow students and who they are. And I think it's great that in order for robust politics to occur, there needs to be communication like that on campus.
I think Bernie Schoenberg wrote an article a couple years later about one of those students, and I think the headline was "There must be something in the water at UIS." So that I only knew a couple of those students later on, but I think just like Matt said, UIS is such a close-knit community. It's hard to hate on people when you're living this close to each other and you're interacting with them every single day. You can't really go off somewhere else and not see them ever again. So I think UIS just fosters a really good family-like community where you're forced to engage with people, you're forced to interact with them, and you just can't avoid it. So it's hard to hate people when you're up close.
If I remember correctly from the bios, it sounded like you guys hadn't been involved in campaigns since the 2016 cycle, I think. And given all of your activity before that, why are you no longer deeply involved in the campaigns of recent?
It just was, I worked for my congressman since high school. He was voted out of office 2016, I think 2018, and I stopped in 2016. His politics changed, and frankly, when I was working for him, every holiday was a parade. I met my wife, we started dating. I didn't want to spend every free day off work doing a parade, sometimes multiple on the 4th of July. I found more pleasant ways to spend my time.
I think for me, I've been on both sides of the campaigns. I've been a staffer, organizing campaigns, and I've been a candidate myself. And like Matt said, it is a huge, huge time commitment. when you see campaigns on TV, it looks glamorous and easy, but it's hard work. Spending 5-6 hours a day knocking on doors, talking to random people that you've never met before. That's really hard. And when I was on the short period of time on the county board here, ran for the election in what I think was like a 70-30 split between the two parties. So I was on the 30 side of things, so it didn't end up well for me. But it was such a commitment. Some people asked me afterwards, "Oh, would you ever do that again?" And there's a reason why most elected officials are over the age of, fill in the blank, because doing that with young kids at home. I think at the time I had a 2-year-old and a 6 or 7-month-old at the time, and being away for an hour to do what I needed to do was hard work. So there's a reason why most elected officials don't have young kids, and those who do have young kids, I have a lot of respect for, because it's incredibly difficult. And so I enjoyed my time working on campaigns, and being involved in campaigns, but it's nice to put that chapter of my life behind me.
My question is specifically for Ryan. I know you said that you work with lobbying for child welfare and things of that nature. So I'm a legal studies major with a minor in child advocacy, and I want to pursue law but help in that area. So how do you see both of those colliding together?
Well, I think children in Illinois could always use good advocates. I mean, there's no shortage of kids in Illinois that need help. My organization, we have 1,000 or so kids that need help, and there's only so many people to go around that can provide assistance. In a former life, 5 or 6 years ago, I was a foster parent. So when you get to the age where you're willing to commit yourself to wanting to help people, there's so many ways to help. You can be a foster parent. You can, if you're going to pursue legal studies, provide pro bono work to families that can't afford it, because most of the families that we interact with, they're not on the higher end of the economic spectrum. So if you're pursuing a legal degree and you have become a lawyer, or you become a paralegal, or whatever you decide to do, there's so many families that could use free services, quite frankly, because they don't have, a lot of these families aren't, they haven't had the best lot in life, and they're in really bad situations. So anytime that anyone's willing to step up and say, I want to fight for your family to be better, I think there's so many ways to get involved in that, and I'd be happy to connect with you later on about that.
In keeping with the theme, Thinking series, I'm going to take you to the future. And Matt made reference to the Green Party when you both were here. We have a lot of polarization today between the two parties. Where do you think we might be going with splinter parties, or maybe other major parties in this country?
I definitely think a future where minor parties had more of a role on the national stage would be intriguing. It would definitely, I think, make our politics a bit more robust. I don't know the practicalities of that these days, where there's a lot of populism going on, but we see it in other countries, especially Western European countries, even our neighbors to the north. They have snap elections. They have minor party coalition governments. I don't think the bones of our politics are set up in a way that currently encourages that, and I think that's on purpose based on the two-party system that we have. But it certainly would make our politics, I think, a bit more robust and bring more involvement from what we currently see.
I'm not very optimistic about additional political parties emerging. In Illinois, for example, ballot access is really difficult for those candidates who want to run for as a new established party, the thresholds to get on the ballot is a lot higher than the two parties. So that really discourages a lot of people. And I think, having our primary system isn't, a lot of people sit out the primaries because they don't want to have an R or D attached to their name for the next 10 years. Because once you do that, once you pull that ballot, then the two parties have your name on file and they will never let go of you. And my wife voted, she voted in a primary years ago and she's still getting stuff in the mail that she doesn't even look at. So I think we should absolutely have more parties. I think more voices are better for democracy, but it's really hard because the two parties have such a grip on how that process would unfold.
Good evening. I'm a psychology junior, and I was wondering if somebody has very passionate views, but they are not sure how to get involved, how might you suggest that they do that?
I think I asked Senator Durbin the same question when I was in high school, and he told me to contact my congressman, and that turned into 10 years of me working on his campaigns and volunteering and working in his office and the constituent service office. I would find a candidate that represents your views as close as they can and become involved with them and just try and start on the ground floor and see how you find it.
I had a friend, a former UIS student, just last fall reached out to me. I hadn't heard from her in years, but she knew I was active locally, and she wanted to get involved somehow. And she didn't really know what she wanted to do. She said, "Oh, well, what board can I be on?" And she just didn't really know what to do. So I put her in touch with the local Republican chairman here in Sangamon County, and now she's running for school board in Chatham. So it's all you got to do is take that first step and tell someone other than yourself that you want to get involved. Like Matt said, candidates and political campaigns, they're always looking for people to get involved, and they'll put you to work very quickly. If you want to be a candidate yourself, it's there are paths to do that, and you don't always have to be the most well-connected person to become a candidate yourself. All you got to do is start circulating petitions, and most people will sign for you. Most of the time they don't care who you are. They're happy to see a fresh face at their door. And when you tell them that you're the candidate, they're much more willing to talk to you.
Just make sure they're registered to vote.
But yeah, so there's no shortage of ways to get involved. And we need more young people to step up. Looking at the General Assembly, my job is to know who all the players in the General Assembly. There's a lot more young people in the General Assembly today than when I first started. When I first started, very few. And when I was on the Sangamon County Board, for example, we had, I think, 30 members, and I was 30 at the time, and the vast majority of them were over the age of 50. So I think they questioned whether I was able to vote when I was sworn in. So when you're young, it's a lot easier to get involved when you're young, because political parties will snatch you up, because they want young people who are passionate, like you said, who are willing to do the work. It's not glamorous work, but there's so many ways to get involved. Find what you want to support. It doesn't have to be a candidate. It could be, there's issues here in Springfield that aren't really political, but they still involved, being informed, and there's organizing involved in things that aren't just politics.
I have the mic now. Hello, everyone. Stephen Johnson Jr. here. I work in student affairs. And so excited, and I want to build off actually your response to the last question. You all mentioned when you talked about finding your home at UIS, your academic home at UIS, being close to the Capitol and the opportunity to experience mentorship and having mentors sort of direct you to this space. So I wanted to ask, one, in your time as a professional, have you had the opportunity to work with other UIS students in your career and mentor them? And then do you have the capacity and interest now at this time to be able to work with aspiring politicians or folks that want to work in public affairs or in your worlds? Would you be open to that moving forward?
Well, when you're at the Capitol, you're always running into someone who went to UIS. So I was telling Matt earlier today that when I was working at the Capitol, UIS asked me to do a Snapchat takeover for the day. And I was trying to figure out how to fill in the time. They wanted so many segments throughout the day, and I knew that there was a lot of UIS alumni in the building. My boss at the time, Sarah, was a UIS alum, and then I could just walk down any hallway at the Capitol and find someone at UIS that went here for grad school, undergrad. So I filled the entire afternoon with just talking with different UIS students who were working at the Capitol in so many different capacities. There was lobbyists, UIS students who were lobbyists, staffers on the Democratic and Republican side. So I can't go anywhere in this town without finding someone that's connected to UIS in some capacity. And I get to work with them. The legislative staff I work with almost on a daily basis, trying to get information on pieces of legislation, and a lot of them are UIS students. So using that connection, it's easy to build strong connections with people, even though I've never met them before.
And I have not had the privilege to mentor any UIS students yet, but I'd certainly be open to it. Live a little bit further away from here, so unfortunately I'm not surrounded by UIS alumni or students, but I would certainly love an opportunity if one arose.
Given your work specifically, can you elaborate on why I've been seeing so much hysterics lately around HB, pardon if I get the number wrong, 2827? The homeschooling registration? And
That's a big one. So I think that bill has gotten more. There were more witness slips filed on that piece of legislation, I think, and Representative Rosenthal may correct me on that, than any other bill in recent history. I think there was 40,000 or so. Over 48,000. So I mean, that's any time you're, and I don't know all the ins and outs of that bill specifically, but from what I've known, anytime you're talking about the government coming in and putting new regulations on things that it hasn't done in the past, you're going to get people that are animated and passionate about that. I mean, there were thousands of families that came to the Capitol last week and the week before advocating on that bill, and that's it was incredible. It was a really good sight to see. That was democracy in action. The committee hearing, I think, lasted 3 or 4 hours of testimony. That was insane. I mean, most committees, they speed through it. Testimony lasts, they cut you off after 2 minutes. So they had people on both sides of the aisle, former homeschool students that supported the bill, families that were against the bill. I mean, it ended up passing, and people were kind of upset about that. But there's what I tell people. A lot of people that I work with in our agency, they don't know the legislative process. So I tell them there's always an opportunity down the line to continue to speak out for or against a bill. So the bill passed a committee. Now it has to go to the floor. So you can, and it's not going to get a vote tomorrow. It's going to be a long process. So between now and then, all those thousands of people are going to continue. Their work isn't done just because the committee had its vote. They can call. I'm sure Representative Rosenthal is going to get a lot of calls on this, and all legislators are. I mean, it's a big issue because it's a new thing that the General Assembly is trying to do, and Illinois hasn't done it before. So a lot of people are saying, if it's, why do it now? And so these families that are involved in homeschooling, they're very passionate. I know a family friend of ours that homeschools one of their kids, and they care deeply. A lot of these families are very, very passionate about their ability to do this for their kids, and I haven't weighed in whether it's good or bad or not. I don't know that, but I think seeing so many, I mean, literally thought you couldn't walk in any of the hallways at the Capitol without these families there. And they were very passionate, and it was a really impressive sight to see. It was well organized, and I think we're going to continue to see more of that.
Joan Sustak. I had the pleasure of working with both of you while you were students here, and I want to take you in a little different direction for a second, if you could. I know you both were on Student Government Association as well during your time here. I'm wondering if you might talk a little bit about what that experience was like in terms of how you worked together to further some initiative here on campus in your roles as student government.
Yeah, we during our time here, we initiated a student movement for a moratorium on the application of additional student fees, which I'm told lasted well after we were gone, which is a surprise for us to find out. In addition, we led a campaign on campus with regards to the student union for a new fee structure to be applied that was more in line with the benefit and the use that certain classes were going to get out of this building as opposed to other classes. So I think us being presidents of the College Democrats and College Republicans allowed us to kind of garner support for those movements on campus that we would have been starting from scratch otherwise.
Yeah, I think for us, this student union probably would have been built a few years earlier had it not been for Matt and I.
Sorry.
Which is true. There was a big, I think it was the year we were living together, was the first referendum on whether or not to initiate the fee and to start to build it. And at the time, that's when student fees had gone up basically every year before that. And Matt and I, we looked at the proposal. At the early stages of that effort, there's a lot of people that had really strong opinions one way or the other. Yes, we need a student union. No, we don't. And that was right around the time, we were kind of going through a recession. The economy wasn't that great. And so Matt and I, seeing how much we were paying to go to UIS, and then we weren't, under the proposal, we wouldn't really have seen any of the benefits of the student union, but we would have paid for several years for that. So we started I think Matt created some flyers about the burden of these student fees, and we passed that around campus, and it ended up being not even a close referendum. And I think a lot of it stemmed from our discussions. We had amongst the Student Government Association that was pretty divided, but Matt and I were much more vocal in going around and talking to students about why at the time it was a bad idea, and thankfully that they revisited it years later and they came up with a better proposal, and the students supported that.
Yeah, it was just an issue with regards to funding and the application of fees as certain graduating classes who buildings don't pop up overnight. And from our tour of campus today, it sounds like funding renovations and additions to campus is an ongoing theme, and that's for future student government associations to deal with.
Your job is done.
No, they did a nice job. The fee kicked in the semester the building opened. So that's what your job is. It's exactly. And I already thanked them that I got to come here for that. So, I think you made a great point about where your sources for information and, just get rid of cable and things like that. I totally agree. But I do think it's challenging for people to find sources for information, especially young people. I mean, I'm not young, but I also look at TikTok. It's got a lot of information out there. I wouldn't call all of it reliable. But what are maybe some sources that you would recommend or options for people to consider?
When it comes to U.S. politics, I like to look at British Broadcasting Channel. They're skewed, but they're skewed to the UK version of our politics. They're not supporting the Democrats or the Republicans necessarily. So I kind of like, when it comes to politics, I like going for someone who doesn't necessarily have a domestic agenda. Encyclopedia Britannica exists online, if you need basic facts, things like that. Wikipedia, at least, it's user generated, but at least you can click on the links and see where that note came from. Don't use any Chinese-based apps, I would say.
Yeah, I like a lot of the more local sources. State Journal Register is still a newspaper I read pretty regularly. Reuters I read a lot of, and the AP. And as much as I bash cable news, I still go to CNN and Fox News pretty regularly just to see. You can usually go to each of their web pages and it's the opposite of what the other is saying. But I still go to those sources just because they're so mainstream that you have to know what those sources are saying. But AP and Reuters I read them a lot.
Asking too many questions. So looking at numbers for a policy class recently, it appears that in the U.S. across the last 6 years, there have been about $1 billion per month on average spent on elections in the U.S. Are the parties earning that return to the citizens? Like, you talk about the lack of additional party possibilities, but we're giving the parties a lot of money.
I've always been of the mindset of if a billionaire wants to waste $500 million, that's good for them. Michael Bloomberg ran for president and literally spent, I think, $500 or $600 million and got almost no votes. He received almost nothing. So that was a horrible return on investment for him. So I'm not too concerned about the money in politics. I'm more concerned about the transparency behind it. So if a lot of these super PACs, you don't really know who's funding it. But I've always been of the belief that, I do agree that I don't believe in limits on how much we should be spending. But as long as we're open and transparent, I think that the voters can make a determination. You can go to the State Board of Elections website and look up any Illinois candidate, and you can look up everything that they've spent their money on, and it's pretty user friendly. But if you go to the Federal Election Commission website, it's really hard to find. If you spend more than 20 minutes, you can figure it out. But it's not user friendly. The State Board of Elections here in Illinois does a really good job of opening the books of what campaigns are spending money on. You can find how much I've been paid in going back, 20 years when I got a $30 check from someone to do work somewhere. So I just think transparency is key. If someone wants to spend tens of millions of dollars on their campaign, go for it. It doesn't guarantee you the outcome you want. The voters could still look at you and say you're wrong. And a lot of times that happens. They'll spend a lot of money and they end up losing. So that more money doesn't necessarily give you the edge, in my opinion.
I mean, political campaign financing is not necessarily about getting the best return for the money, or even applying those funds to the best societal use. Arguably, it's the opposite. But the alternative is public financing of campaigns, and I don't necessarily think our tax dollars should be going towards funding public candidates for office. I do believe that spending funds on campaigns is related to free speech. I don't necessarily think, corporations can't vote, so why can they spend money? There's argument there against Citizens United, but I don't necessarily think there should be a limit on campaign funding, whether you want to donate funds to another candidate or spend your money on yourself if you are a candidate. I think that's some common ground that Ryan and I share. But unfortunately, if a billionaire wants to spend funds on someone's election rather than feed the hungry, they're free to do that in this country. And if there's transparency, like Ryan indicated, they'll be held accountable for that in the court of public opinion. But we do have freedom of speech in this country.
This is more of a statement, I guess, than a question, but it will lead to a question and maybe discussion. Back when I was a student getting a master's degree here, and that was when most of you had yet to be born, but that was when it was Sangamon State. And I appreciated the instructors that I had that provided news clippings of various on both sides of whatever the issue might be. And you made reference to cable news, but I want to talk about a local controversy, a controversy here in Central Illinois that was breaking in the late 70s, early 80s, and it ended up on 60 Minutes, one of the granddaddy of the news magazines, broadcast magazines. And the company that was being targeted asked CBS if they could do their own taping of everything that went on, and which they did. I got to see both the edited CBS portion as well as the portion that the company did, and believe me, there were two different answers on that. And from that point on, I realized that not only you need to do a deep dive when any time the media, which has all the gold, is doing the talking.
Any comments about that?
I mean, I think that's great advice. I think it corresponds with don't just read the headline and take that as fact. You need to put time in if you want to become knowledgeable on an issue.
Okay, I kind of wanted to go back to your guys' like leadership here on campus and ask like, what advice would you give to like student leaders now on how to like get other students to care like about our campus and to just like get them involved in like certain things?
I would say first, don't be afraid to be the only one out there. I think, like I said, when I started the College Republican meeting, being the leader of the organization, not a lot of people showed up. And there were some meetings throughout the year where I was one of 2 or 3 other people that showed up. I remember one time I invited a candidate to come and speak, and I think it was late at night, and there was only 4 or 5 of us, so I kind of felt bad about the person taking the time out. But it showed a commitment from us that we were going to be there regardless. Every week we were there. It was like clockwork. Every week 8:30 at Founders Hall we had our room scheduled, so the students on campus knew we were going to be there whether they showed up or not. So don't be afraid to be the only voice talking about an issue. If there's something the administration is doing that you think students should be informed about, start a Facebook page about whatever topic that is and get different voices to come and comment on that, and just keep speaking out and keep sharing your opinion. Don't be afraid. Everyone's friendly. All the professors and the administration, they're all friendly people. They're all human, and if there's an issue that students should care about that you think they're not caring about, just keep talking about it, and eventually you'll gain more supporters.
Yeah, Ryan and I hung up hundreds of flyers all around campus for various events. We bribed plenty of students with free pizzas on a weekly basis. The College Republicans had a trip to CPAC one year to get students involved. The College Democrats had a concert on the quad. My suite mate in Lincoln Residence Hall had a band that was happy to play for free, and we gave away free T-shirts. I received a stipend for being president of the Student Government Association, and I spent the whole thing on free T-shirts just to get people to wear College Democrat gear. So just do what you can to get students involved who normally wouldn't be otherwise, and some of them will stick around.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you very much, Ryan and Matt. That was fabulous. In closing, I'd like to announce our next Chancellor's Thinker series, which will be in the fall, September 15th, and our own Jake Freefeld will be the speaker. He is the director of the Center for Lincoln Studies. So more information on that to come. And then truly to close, we have a closing thoughts question, okay? What has been the biggest light bulb moment in your journey as a thinker on this particular topic, and how has it shaped your path?
You just need to be open-minded and patient and put in effort, basically in everything you do in life. And this topic is politics and bipartisanship, and that doesn't just happen naturally. You have to go out of your way to truly reach out to the other side. So try and put a little bit more effort into not just hating the other side.
I think for me, there wasn't just one light bulb moment, but from the start of from leaving UIS until now, I've just been naturally surrounded by people that cared more about getting things done than politics. My first boss out of college was a Reagan Republican, and now he works for Governor J.B. Pritzker. So it's, there's just surround yourself. I've been fortunate to surround myself with really good people that I've learned a lot from, and I've tried to emulate them in many ways, and just they've always had open door policies about talking about issues, and I've just been really fortunate to be around those types of people.
Great. Let's give him one more round of applause. Thanks a lot. And I hope you'll all enjoy a little bit of refreshments and some more continued conversation out in the meeting area there.